Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on MBD using Creo Parametric. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that if you have questions, please submit them through the question chat, and we'll try to save enough time at the end to answer them. This webinar will also be available after the presentation on our website and TriStar.com later this afternoon. And for all registered attendees, you'll be sent a free recording. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Thiago.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Good morning, everyone. My name is Thiago. I work at TriStar. Welcome to the webinar. Today's topic is going to be a model-based definition using Creo Parametric. Real quick, before we begin, let me take a quick minute to talk about TriStar. We are a company that helps manufacturing companies, adopt software systems and processes to enable and allow better and more efficient product development, right? So, and we do that by being the largest value-added resellers for PTC products worldwide. And we are headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm based out of a west suburb of Chicago. And we have our team spread across the United States and Canada, right? So with that, from an agenda standpoint, some of you may be new to the MBD journey. Some of you may be halfway there. Some of you, maybe at different maturity levels when it comes to model-based definition, adoption, and usage within your enterprise. What I thought was to go over an overview real quick initially, and then, talk about the process, right? Maybe get into Creo Parametric and show you a few methods of how to prepare the model, maybe using start parts, how to create those annotations using those combination states. We'll also kind of go over maybe some of you who are experienced in MBD might be interested to know if time permits, we'll kind of cover what are some of the more recent enhancements we did or PTC did in the area of model-based definition, especially the annotate feature, which has been there since the old Pro Engineer wildfire days, but they have done quite a few improvements there. And like Nick said, if you could start putting in your questions in the Q&A, in the questions section, and we'll try to get to it towards the end. So we'll have some questions and answers time towards the end of the presentation. And we will be recording this, and it'll be made available to all the attendees there. So with that said, just run through a few slides. I'll switch between Creo and the slide deck. But initially, what exactly is model-based definition? If you think about it, it's essentially your single source of truth is your 3D model, right? And the idea is to define all the product manufacturing information, as we call PMI, in that 3D model, making the 2D drawing optional, right? So I'm not gonna, MBD is not to say, oh, we're not paper-based or anything like that. It's, yeah, you can still continue to use that, continue to use the traditional 2D process, but depending on where you are in the journey, it would be nice to start annotating your 3D CAD model. And at some point of time in the future, right, the good news is you could start slow and run progress at your own pace. An annotated 3D model will continue to support your conventional, 2D processes that you currently have. But the reverse is not true. So the annotated 3D model can always be printed out as needed to support any 2D processes, right? The sooner you begin preparing your annotating, the 3D annotated model, the easier it'll be when you are ready to begin the MBD journey, right? So that's just a high level of what exactly is MBD, if you think about it. And we have, when we walk into customer sites, we have seen there are customers that are already implemented MBD, but everybody had to start slow. They probably start off with some pilot programs, and then they take one step at a time, the crawl, walk, run phase, as we call it, right? And hopefully in the next hour, I can give you a quick overview and also focus on some of the Creo areas of how you could prepare the model, how you create annotations, and give you some examples at the same time, right? And answer any questions you might have. Now, we talked about what is MBD, and if you look at the picture that I have in this slide, it's an engineer using a drafting board and paper-based process to design and detail, right? And many processes that we currently have in existence, I would say, are still revolving around a 2D print, right? So before 3D CAD, obviously, we all know where we came from, the drawing board days, then came AutoCAD or the 2D CAD system, and then 3D CAD systems start becoming popular, right? So 2D was the standard format and primary, I would say, engineering deliverable, right? It's also widely regarded as the legal asset that kind of describes or defines the product, right? When the supplier ships parts to the OEM, the checker validates and inspects the critical dimensions using maybe a highlighter and the physical drawing. That's where that's kind of where that's the document that inspections using, and 2D drawings are also referenced on the shop floor to provide all the product information details for them to make the model, right? Now, on the digital transformation side, model-based definition is kind of like a new approach. I mean, I wouldn't say it's really new. The first ASME meeting happened back in 1997, 98, when 3D CAD systems starting to get popular. So it's been out there, the standards, and we'll talk about it in a little bit here, but the schema and how they came up with the standards. But model-based definition is a new approach or process that's the intention is to reduce or eliminate reliance on the 2D drawings, right? So using Creo Parametric, all the critical information and values are contained within the 3D model. This includes your dimensions, your tolerances, GTOLs, nodes, what have you, right? If the model contains all the information, why are we still, the question is, why are we still creating and managing a separate asset called the 2D drawing to show the same information, right? So that's the question, right? So if you want to obviously automate manufacturing by making it software readable, machine readable, rather than human readable with the 2D drawings, right? So those are some general concepts or overview on the MBD. Now, you can see here are some metrics, from these are some from PTC, some metrics I have here. But the idea is you're creating a 3D annotated model that has semantic references that could be used downstream, maybe in an inspection or a CAM software, for example. So what we're trying to do here is we are doing faster product development, essentially decreasing the cost of design authoring, right? If you think about the authoring tools we use, it could be Creo Parametric or it could be any other 3D CAD system these days. Less time spent on managing the drawings, automated updates, through your digital thread, right? Decreasing time to market. Those are the benefits of using it. And one of the important things is about quality, right? You can see an example there in my slide about the model-based versus drawing-based, about the errors that you might run into. And this is actually there was actually a research team, from NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which had conducted a study just to kind of check, the difference between paper-based and model-based. And if you look at it, right, the approaches, two different approaches, and they found over 60%, they were able to save, right, in the hours in both different, the difference between the drawing based versus the model based. And not only that, there was also this has been in the journal back in 2016. You could look it up, but you could see the two examples I have on the slide there. It's like there are two suppliers, and one they sent the drawing, and the other used more the 3D model. And then the problem was in the 2D drawing, they missed obviously the hole, the depth of the hole call out was missed in the whole call out, as you can see. And so the machinist obviously, they just thought it's a through all hole, and they did it through all hole, whereas the model based one, who are using for your NC programming, they got the 3D model and they were able to catch that. So just one of those examples here, right, where for product quality also MBD is going to be useful, right? And like I said earlier, right, many of you may be at different levels when it comes to MBD adoption. But just to give you a quick overview before I get into the Creo side of things, we do now have an understanding of what MBD is, right? It stands for model-based definition. That is the annotated model and its associated data elements, right? That's really what it is, right? Effectively, you're making the 2D drawing optional, right? That's what I would say. I would call it optional. I'm not eliminating the 2D drawing. You may still continue to use that, but it becomes optional essentially. And we're also looking at who is consuming these, right? So, if you look at the extended enterprise, right? As engineers, we sometimes tend to think about ourselves in the engineering department and in the design department, but then there's manufacturing, inspection, quality, procurement, right? So if you look at the entire enterprise, if you think about model-based enterprise, it's an organization that could use this model-based definition for the purpose of, commission, operation, service, and decommission of that product. So you are essentially using that single source of truth, the 3D model, for all the downstream for downstream activities and the other departments in your extended enterprise. So that will be MBE, and some of you may be using Windchill, and obviously PLM a solution, a product lifecycle solution management solution like Windchill enables MBE, right? You might have heard of the digital thread these days, and it provides a seamless flow of data up and down in the value chain. We're able to, connect each phase of the product life cycle from design, testing, production, all the way to service. But at the same time, you're using this single source of truth, the 3D CAD model with all the PMI or the product manufacturing information, and it's able to kind of travel through all these different areas in your enterprise. So with that said, just one last slide here about the maturity of adoption and the different levels of maturity. There are several maturity levels. To keep it simple, what we have here is the 4 levels. You may be drawing centric, where you just 3D model is not verified or configuration controlled. The 2D the 2D drawing is a master, and then you may have make it next level is model centric, where we're having the 2D master drawing with an associated 3D model, like in Creo Parametric that you may already have. Most of you may be in that second maturity level. And then model-based definitions you're going to talk about in here is about the 3D CAD model becoming the master, and the 2D drawing, like I said, becomes optional or an as required. If you prefer, you could still do that. You could even create a print out of the 3D model if required, but it becomes optional. And then the next level is to kind of see who is kind of consuming this information across the enterprise, and then make it a model-based enterprise, right? So those are just the different maturity levels, just to keep it simple. There are several in there, several multiple levels, but I wanted to just keep it simple here. And then just this is a dated one, but still it gives you an idea of the different industries, whether it's aerospace, defense, heavy equipment, automotive, or high tech. Aerospace typically, they lead in these MBD initiatives, but you could see back in 1998, the ASME Y14.41 committee was formed. You can see the list of customers there. So it's been in the works for some time. And if I remember correctly, Pro Engineer, the old used to be Creo Parametric, used to be called Pro Engineer back in the days. And back in Wildfire 2.0 or 3.0 is when they had their very first annotate feature. They introduced that, and over the several Creo releases now, all the way till Creo 11 and Creo 12 coming up in a few months from now, they do have several improvements and enhancements in this area. So the adoption is there, and just to give you a quick overview there. Okay. So with that said, let's talk about Creo now, right? So with that little high overview, on the Creo side, all we're doing is we are taking advantage of this thing called combination states, which some of you may or may not have used. It's very helpful in the assembly environment. Those who are not doing MBD, you may have used combination states quite a lot in assemblies and leveraging that in your 2D drawings. But we are making sure that it's also compliant with the ASME Y14.41 standards and the organization schema or the namings for the combination states is based on the MIL standard 31000A, right? They have a section on digital product definition and data practices. And so on the Creo side, if the idea is to, okay, you're telling us that the 2D drawing becomes optional, but how do we show all that information now, or it's going to be displayed in the 3D model, and it could be your standard notes, it could be your tolerances, your dimensions, your surface finish, your symbols that you see on the screen here. How are we going to show that here? Right? I know it sounds easy, and it's yeah, you can quickly show it. It's already available there. But if you try to show all that in the 3D model, you might end up getting something what you see on the screen right now, what I call an overload of data here, where it's essentially showing all the notes and the dimensions and all the PMI, and they're all overloaded here. And so the way we solve this problem is using combination states, right? So those are not used combination states inside of Creo Parametric. Maybe I'll do a quick demo also here in a second, but think of combination states as a way to combine your simplified reps, your exploded states, your styled reps, your orientations, your cross sections, your appearances, your layer state, right? You're including all that. Or you're combining or you're referencing a specific exploded state. Like in this case, you can see I'm referencing a specific orientation, a specific simplified rep, a specific cross section, etc. I'm also controlling the visibility. More importantly, that's very important, right? The visibility, so that you don't get this kind of an overload of unreadable data. We want to make sure that we have something like this, where one visualization state could be like this, another state, the combination state could be like this, focused on the geometries on the holes in the top, for example, and this is more on certain other areas of the design. So, before I proceed further, let me jump into Creo real quick. And before even I show you MBD, those who are not very familiar with the concept of combination states, in assemblies and parts, if I go to View Manager, right, and there is this all tab called combination states. So what does it do? It can reference exploded states, can reference simplified reps, style states, etc. So what I could do, so right now I have all tabs here, and if I go to double click on my combination state, looks like I'm switching only the views for now. It looks like that seems pretty easy, straightforward. But now what happened was it was able to go to a specific appearance state. A few components are not there, for example, right? I'm in another combination state where I see an exploded state with some appearance turned on or off. So right now, so I do have quite a few in these, and you can display them at the bottom here, and you can just go say I have it, kind of display them at the bottom too. And so these are states that I have where I'm just able to click on them, and it's kind of activating that specific exploded state right there, or that specific view state. So it's been available in assemblies for quite some time, right? So it's my assembly has some regeneration thing that's going on as I switch to a different combination state here. But how could we leverage this on for MBD, right? The idea is when I go into my view manager and then I go to any of these states, right, combination states, and redefine that, right, a definition, I see that it's able to reference a specific orientation, an exploded state. I can control layers using layer states, right, or appearance states. All that are available in one single area. So what I'm thinking is, in my part, let's say we talked about, 2D drawing becomes optional. So I have a part here. We'll also talk about start parts and how to do these things from scratch in a little bit from now. But this is a model where I go to my annotate tab here. And as soon as I go to annotate tab, you should automatically see your combination states in here. Or I can go to my view manager and I do see my combination states up here. And for example, I do have a combination state called zero model, right? That's my initial one. I have a map. So think of this map almost like a 3D roadmap, if you will, right? As to how I'm going to show the different annotations and different combination states. So if I click on general information, it is automatically, watch what it's doing. It's toggling to the general combination state. That is a hyperlink. I can go back to my sitemap. So I have the sitemap hyperlink that takes me back to the original one. And I can now look at my properties in here. And as you can see, in my detail tree up here, there are different annotations that are available or attached to different combination states. That's really what we're doing here, right? So I can go back to the sitemap here. I'm holding Control key and selecting that. That way it's a hyperlink. I'm going to my notes in here. I got some notes that you typically put it in your drawing format. For example, I'm going back to my sitemap. And if I go to my GD&T datums in here, there's my datum feature symbols, as we call now, or set datums, the old school set datums. Now we call datum feature symbols, right? And I also have some notes here called 7B, 7A, etc. Right? So it looks like if I try clicking on that 7C mounting hole, it should take me to that specific combination state called 7C. So I have a hyperlink that allows me to take a look at the dimensions to control that hole at the bottom there, right? I can go back to my sitemap here and I say, okay, show me the 7D1, and that has a different set of dimensions. So instead of showing in different views that you would do in a traditional 2D drawing, we are just using combination states. That's really what it is, right? As you can see, right? And if I go to my, and it's very easy to create a new one, and we'll go through a few things in here in a little bit. But if I go to my view manager, I can go access any of these combination state, and I can go ask it to reference a specific view or an as-is view that I created during creating the annotation, right? Or I could also control the layer state, for example, right? Is everything off, on? Is it referencing a specific layer state? What about the appearances, cross sections, things like that, right? So that's just to give you an idea of how combination state could help out. So now we have an idea. Okay, we talked about what is MBD. We already know. Okay, it looks like there was a tool inside of Creo Parametric to allow to solve this problem of unreadable data, and we are getting here somewhere, right? But what about in a company or an enterprise? There's going to be different departments. There's going to be manufacturing, inspection, and there's going to be engineering. And we don't want every engineer to be creating it in their own way. We need some standard best practices or process is important here, right? We do know the tools available now, but if I were to give you a high level overview of the MBD steps in Creo, right? Each one of these steps could be its own webinar, honestly speaking, but I'll give you a quick overview. We'll focus on a couple of them for now. But the idea is to make sure that your company creates an MBD start part, right? And that has these combination states or combined states already predefined. It may already have view orientations, which you may already very well have, apart from your parameters, your layers, layer state, feature groupings, right? That way, everybody has a consistent start point, and you're also adhering to that middle standard schema that they put together based on the ASME Y14.41, right? Standards there. And then you start creating your annotations as required, depending on the model, right? Both parts and assemblies are supported. And then you modify those annotations. You may create annotation elements or annotation features. I prefer annotation features to better organize them in my tree, right? And I'm able to copy and paste it. And there are different ways to create those annotations, right? As part of a feature or as its own little element, right? Independent one. And then finally, you want to publish this to as a technical data package. It could be your Creo view, lightweight viewable, which you're already doing it with your windshield configuration with the CAD worker, or it could be a 3D PDF, or maybe the new STEP AP242 format that can also have this PMI exported along when you do an export to AP242, including the semantic references there. So there's a process, right, for that. And now the schema that I talked about earlier, right? That's you can, it's publicly available. You should be able to Google Mill Standard 31000A, and they have put together let me kind of zoom in here, the names that could be used for those combination states, right? Zero model only, and then comes the default, right? Any proprietary notice, ITAR notice, legal notice, what have you, and then the site map that I showed you with that model, and then your things that you put in your title block typically, right, in a 2D drawing, and then your properties like mass properties, your XYZ coordinates of your center of gravity, for example, volume, things like that, and any other optional characteristics that you would like to convey manufacturing and that should be part of the PMI, right? That's important. And then you add your notes, your datums that you'll be using for your GTOLs. And then comes the user-defined one, which starts with MBD 6 for assemblies, and then MBD 7A, 7B, 7C, etc., more for different areas of your design for your machining operations, and then for welding operations, MBD 8. And yeah, so this little this PDF, you should be able to you should be able to review it, and you can try to follow that schema if you're new. In fact, many of the images are from the old Pro Engineer in that one, but they do have the schema detailed out as to what is a suggested combination state name. And this is what I'd encourage you to, if you're new to the MBD journey, I would encourage you to use that as a reference to create a start part. So if you don't want, like in this example I see, you can see three different models here, each having different combination states, right? Here I have a different set of combination state names. Here I have different, here another one in here. And maybe that's where we could reference that the standard, the mill standard 31000A, and how do we create a start part out of that? So the model preparation is important, right? Maybe create a layer state with everything turned off and everything shown, right? Things like that. That's something you may want to have too. So that's a very next step. As a company, you don't want your users to be creating this every time, and that could there could be mistakes done if it's going to be a manual option. So you want to make sure that you include that as part of your start part. So when I say start part, we are making sure that anybody creates a new assembly or a component in my company, right? Currently, you're having your start part that already has parameters, your unit systems, your datums, axes, what have you, your layers. We're just going one step ahead and also adding those combination states in there, your notes, things like that, right? And that way, every model in the company has this schema that has been configured already, and then the user now takes over and tries to create those user-defined 7A, 7B, 7C combination states, right? In fact, let me quickly go back to Creo here, and if I go to one of my start parts, and here that I have, so I'm going to open up a start part in here. So let's say this is the TriStar's start part. Let's say as a company, let's assume that for the design engineers and the engineer designers in our company, we're going to put together a start part here. And what we have done is, if you look at the start part, you would have your typical parameters as always, right? So with your usual description modeled by company name, things that varies company to company, right? That is there. That's something most likely already there. And then your datums, naming conventions. During my industry days, I didn't like the front, right, and top. I used to call it X, Y, Y, Z, Z, X, based off of my coordinate system. So those things are already most likely done if you're a customer that has been using Creo for a little bit now. I'm pretty sure you have a customized start part, right, with your parameters, with your accuracy settings, and everything in there, right? With your layers also, right? So if I go to my layer tree, I should see a set of layers. That way, every designer is not creating a new layer, and then we get several hundreds of layers. When I open a large assembly, we want to make sure that we kind of standardize that. So with that initial setup, all we're doing is we are going to the view manager here, and we have created that combination state, right? So if I go to the combination state model only or one map, looks like I already created a map in here, right? Now they're all currently, these nodes are tied to the coordinate system, looks like, because I do not have any geometry yet, right? So, and did you notice all my datums and layers are hidden? How did that happen? In my view manager here, under layers, I have all on and all off. So there are like two, we encourage you to create like two layer state. Layer state has been there since the Pro Engineer Wildfire days before Creo. Layers have been there forever, but then layer state allows you to have different layer or different hide and hide statuses that could be saved. And I have an all off and all on. So I know as I go to model only, I'm able to see my datums and everything. Everything is turned on, but I go to one map, I see most of them are turned off. I go to general, and there I get my additional information like my notes, my properties. And those properties could be parametric. Obviously, it should be parametric. That's a good practice, right? Just like you do in your 2D drawing, your ampersand MP underscore mass, that would be a parameter based on your mass properties, or it could even be windshield parameters for your life cycle state, your version, your model name, etc. Right? So all those could be captured there. And then if I go to 7A, 7B, all those are yet to be done, and understandably so. I may, as a designer, they may start doing 7E, F, etc. They may start adding additional ones in the future, but at least I've given them a good start point to begin with, right? That's really what I'm doing. And this little, banner as I have it here, it's more like an annotate feature that I've created. Normal, it's like flat to screen, and I turned on every, this little security marking, right? So that way it'll be always there in all my combination states, right? That way it's always there. So it's good to kind of start with a start part like this. And then that way, when you create a new model next time, I'm creating a new part from scratch. If your config had been set up, it should pull that. But in my case, I could always go, instead of using the default ones, I'm going to go to my start part here that I have. And there it is. I create a new design. I already have all the major work done for me. And my job is to start working on the model and then capture those annotations as we go, right? So that's so we talked about what is MBD, we talked about the process, we talked about the start parts here. Now, the next step is, now that you have the groundwork done, or I would say at least from a standardization standpoint, you have the groundwork done to start creating some annotations. Now comes the fun part where you're starting to creating these annotations. So this is something that pretty much all of you who have done did CAD for a while, you're not new to, right? We all know the difference between driving dimensions and driven dimensions, right? The dimensions that are created in the 2D drawing as a created dimension versus the feature owned, model owned dimensions, which are driving the design, and your geometric tolerances, your control frames, right? Your datum targets. And recently, in fact, in Creo 11, PTC finally also supports tables inside of that's a new enhancement inside of MBD or annotate feature. You can place tables. No repeat region tables yet, so there's a little bit of a work there, but at least tables. I'll show you some demos of those enhancements in a little bit here. But the next step is obviously to create annotations, and the way you do this is using the annotate tab. So that becomes a big, from a usability, if you're a user, right, you start using this, and you spend a lot of time in that annotate tab where you start creating new combination states, you update views. It's very important to control the annotation orientation, the view, and the text orientation. So the annotation planes become important, right? Which can be modified or customized as required, which could also be part of your start part, actually, or you can do it on your own design as well. And then you start creating your annotations as part of a feature that's grouped inside of a feature. And you can add semantic references to it, or it could even also be, standalone annotations, including the tables. And here's a typical. We have a good start point now of a typical start part, and then just to kind of show you how we would do it, and then we start kind of organizing these annotations according to the schema, right, that I showed you earlier. And then add additional notes as required, right? The annotation plane becomes important, where you get to control the viewing direction as well as the text orientation direction. You can create new ones there. And also, how are you going to control the visibility? That's very important. Do you want to control visibility inside of the combination states by hiding, removing them, enabling them, or disabling them from the combination state? Or do you want to use the layer state, right? So there are, depending on how you want to do that, there are icons show up differently as to how you're controlling the visibility there, right? And most important is, remember, somebody's consuming this 3D design throughout the enterprise. So when you're sending it out as a step AP242 or in an inspection software and a CAM software, when they look at this annotation, they would like to see the semantic reference of that. So that's very important when it comes to MBD, where you can also do a semantic query on that, right? And so let me just do a quick overview on some of the things we talked about here. So let's see, I'm going to open up a model, let's say. So we talked about the start part, and now we do have, let's say, a start part, and I'm going to open one of my designs here. Let's say the geometry is already done, where I'd like to have the design is done, and I'm gonna and I'm also I luckily I started off with a good start part, so I have pretty much most of it done here. But how does that process look like, and how do you start creating new ones? For example, I'm going through my combination states. By the way, if I go to View Manager, if I go to the Alt tab, by default, your display combined views may be turned off, right? So I had to kind of enable it. So it might, this kind of how it might look like. And let me kind of make this a wee bit larger here. So the graphics toolbar, and there's a 3D. So by default, when I open a model, I'm not seeing any annotations because my 3D annotation display is being turned off up here, right? So I turn that on, and I see a security marking, and I see the standards. It looks like it's based off of ASME Y14.5 and 14.41. So maybe I need to adhere to those standards, right? So that's something we have it as part of our start part. And now to look at those views, I can go to my view manager and turn them on here, right? So that I could see them almost like sheets in a drawing. You can see it at the bottom here, right? That's kind of one way to see it and navigate through my, now I didn't notice that as I'm clicking through it, in my sitemap, I do have, for example, these hyperlinks here that allows me to go to the datums, and I can look at the datums, and it goes to a specific combination state. But it'll be nice to go back to that sitemap. I don't want to come back here and go to the sitemap every time, for example, right? So what I'm thinking is, even if I click on this counterbore combination state, it goes to the state, but it'll be nice to have a hyperlink here, and you can go to annotate tab. So this annotate tab is where all the magic happens here, right? So as soon as you go to annotate tab, you could see how your tree is a split tree or model tree, and your detailed tree with the annotations, right? With the notes, the security marking is like one that had that was in all the states. And then I'm able to create new combination states, control the annotation planes. I can also create my own, right? And here I can go to annotation planes and create new annotation planes if required, right? And this is where you do all your annotations, things that you would do in a drawing, like showing dimensions, right? Showing driving dimensions or creating driven dimensions, right? GTOLs, you can also create an annotate feature where all these could be grouped into that feature too, or we can add them or consume annotations done independently into a feature if required for better organizing. And then there's table and semantic query. So that's really the area where you'll be working on primarily as a user once you have your start part set up. And in this case, I'd like to have a note. So when I go to create a note, a plain note here, can you see how the orientation is? It depends on what I have here. So that's important. I see a blue and a red in here. Blue is the viewing direction, and the red is kind of like a text orientation direction here, right? So as I hover over different ones in here, right, I could see a little grid telling me how it's going to be. And I want to do flat to screen for now. And I'm going to call it sitemap, for example, right? So now when I click on that sitemap, I'd like you to go to this particular combination state where I had the mapping of all the, it's like a 3D roadmap essentially, right? So how do I add a hyperlink to this guy? I can just go there and I can just simply right click and add a link here. I can a couple of options as always with Creo, right? You have a little hyperlink up here too, but I could just go and add a link, and it allows me to simply select your combination states from your start part that you already have here, right? All the ones that I have. So I'm going to select the site map, and I click OK. So now I know that if I hold Control and click on that, it automatically toggles to the site maps. I'm using a hyperlink there. Okay, so that's great. I was able to go to this counterboard, and I was able to click this guy here, and it got back to this one, right? And that is good. But what if I click on this one here? I don't have it in this combination states. It looks like I already only have that in one of those combination states, which is this one. How do I quickly add it to all the other combination state? No worries. Again, there are so many options, right? I select my annotation, and when I go to my annotate tab here, I can assign it or remove it from state. So I'm able to simply go assign to state, and I can just go drag select pretty much all of these right now, and I click OK. And that's pretty much it. So now if I go back to that state, right, I could, that sitemap is available in pretty much everywhere. So if I go to the Clevis slot combination state, I have the sitemap. If I go to this combination state, I have the sitemap. So it's quite easy to kind of create annotations and kind of have it across multiple combination state. That's the first part. And well, how easy it is to create new ones, you know? So you're thinking, you know, Tiago, this is all great. You're always showing things that are already done, right? Everything's already done. How do you create new combination states? So that's pretty easy, right? You just hit new here, right? And I'm going to create a new combination state real quick, and I can just call it, right? I can just right click and rename it, and I can just call it MBD, for example. We'll call it 7B here, right? For now, right? There it is. And it's easy to just, I'm going to drag it over next to the default. You can just click and drag it just like you would drag anything else. And I want to start, you know, if I in this particular state, I want to do something. I want to actually go to this specific view where I might be adding some notes in here, right? And I might add some additional visibility to it, for example, right? Those type of things. So how do I update this? I can hit update here. This camera icon, it essentially updates that view. So if I go to my counterboard view versus the 78 view, you see what we accomplished, right? Simple, pretty simple there, right? And of course, I can always go back, edit definition, and I could just say, hey, you know, what about the layer state, or what about the appearance state, right? What do you want to do with that? Or I can, right now I'm going to hide and hide, but you could always use your layer state to hide and hide if you wish. Maybe so now that I'm in this state, I want to add a note here. Well, for example, I probably want to add an unattached note, or maybe I want to add an attached note in here, right? So different notes could be done. I can also go to a different view and start modifying those at any point of time, but you could also modify it while you're here, right? So so different options are available, as you can see. Now, right now I'm on flat to screen, that's why I'm not getting anything else, right? I'm getting these two options, so I can change that view, right? So maybe I want to go, let's say I know the orientation is wrong, but we'll take it for now. I'll just hit top. I'm going to go into leader note, and I'm going to add a leader note here. And I know it's a wrong orientation. I'll just put in some note here, but I know that came out really opposite of what I was thinking, what I was thinking, right? So I didn't change it, but it's very easy to change that, right? Anytime you can go to change orientation, and you can kind of flip the visualization, you know, the way you're viewing, or you can kind of play with your text orientation, and there it is, you got it back, right? Now, one little thing I want to show here is I could also go set up what we call like a semantic query here. So where I can go to semantic query, and right now it looks like the semantic query is applied only on that surface, and maybe I want to add more references. So I could just go to references in that annotation feature, and this is added in one of the earlier releases of Creo, where I could go do those smart selection techniques like holding down the shift, getting the entire seed boundary surface there, and adding to that. So now if I do a semantic query, and I know that, you know, in downstream, they will be able to look at this annotation and see the reference surfaces there. So that's nice. And maybe if I want to go back to my counterboard view here, and maybe I want to start adding in some additional, maybe, I'm changing different ones, different combination states or adding annotations here. I can create dimensions, but before I create dimensions, kind of good practice is kind of see, since we're not in the 2D world, how do you want this to be oriented, right? Maybe the front is good. I hover over these. I'm looking at my blue and red arrows there, and I start creating my dimensions here, right? So just like in your drawing mode, you're able to, add annotations, delete annotations, pretty straightforward to do all that, right? So if I go to right now, it's set to front, and I want to add this. Maybe I want to convert it to a diameter here. Maybe I might want to add tolerances and things like that, right? So that's also quite easy, So once you're done with it, my tolerance are turned off, but I can just to quickly go into my, I had my config with the tolerance turned off. So I'll just make sure that I have my tolerances turned on, and that way I can just go add tolerances. Maybe we'll make it symmetric. We'll give it a specific value, and I can add my let's say there are 4 holes there, so maybe I'll just make it 4 times, etc. Right? So maybe I don't like that orientation. Anytime you can just go change orientation, and I'm thinking, how about a 270, or maybe 290 here, right? Maybe I like that, and maybe I can add a G-tall to that. Whole dimension there, and of course I can go change the GTOL reference, the characteristic that you want to add. In this case, I'm doing a position tolerance. But for all these, right, if I could go to my references, I can always say, okay, what are my references here? My references are supposed to be these. So that's a very important, right? And there's an enhancement made where you no longer have to click each half. When you pick a cylinder, both halves are picked when you do semantic referencing. That's a big one in there. Same thing for your GTOL as well, right? So for your references, you want to make sure that for the counterboard, I'm adding my references here, semantic reference, and there it is, right? And so let's say I've done quite a bit of these, and I've been working on these different combination states, and now what, right? So of course, I can export it to Creo view, check into Windchill, and configure my CAD worker to have these combination states in there. I'm not currently connected to Windchill. I could export it manually. By the way, if you still need to create a print, or yeah, there are ways to just create a print from the 3D, and you can pick the combination states. Is it current, all, or range? I can go range, could define, okay, I just want to print these guys here, right? I can do that, or maybe I want to go print all. I hit OK. And right now I'm going to go connect to a PDF right now, and that's an option too. And we'll just give it a name here in my desktop, and I'm just creating it. And you can see it animating as it's creating those different combination states that I selected or added to that. If you need that PDF, it's going to do that in a few minutes here. It's almost done. It's kind of going through the different combination states that we had, right? And it's almost done, I think. And if I go to my desktop here, and I'm going to open the PDF, and there it is, right there. You have your different combination states and the different annotations. That's one option. Or you can just go save as, save a copy, and you're going to do your step file. You go to your options, and the AP242 format allows exporting of annotations and the rich content, which is your semantic reference as well, right? So that's another way where you're going to send it to inspection or manufacturing. You're able to do that, or you can just on the Creo view side, if I want to publish a lightweight viewable, I can go publish that a lightweight viewable for Creo view. Manual, I'm doing it since I'm not connected to Windchill. However, I could set up a recipe file to include the combination states, and that would look something like this here, right? So if I go to If I'm just loading the state here, and if I go to my viewables, there's my default 1, default 2, and also got it in Creo view. Should be able to view all those in there, right? So just a very high level overview of there of kind of how the process looks like, and getting back in here. I know we are running short of time here, almost at 10 minutes here left. So let me go back to my presentation. Let's see here. There you go. The rest of the process is more like, yeah, you're trying to modify your annotations as required, maybe moving an annotation from one plane to another plane, trying to complete that combination states final review, and then kind of plan on what type of format you're going to send it to the extended enterprise, your partners, suppliers, right? Is it a lightweight viewable that they have access to your Windchill? Is it going to be step AP242? Is it some kind of a QIF format or other formats, maybe an XML format for further, supporting the model-based enterprise journey. But just real quick before we wrap up here, I kind of told you that PTC has had this annotate feature since the old Pro Engineer days, right? That's when they introduced it in Wildfire 2.0 or 3.0. That's been more than 20 years now, right? Roughly. But ever since, the focus of enhancements has been MBD is a constant area that has been focused, right? Even in Creo 7, there was detailing in MBD. Creo 8, or if you think about 9, 10, 11, right? There's always that focus just to kind of, as customers, for you to know that, oh yeah, like different things, tables we didn't have, and now they've included tables and things like that. For example, in Creo 11, they now automatically add the two halves of the holes, right? The cylindrical surfaces used to be a pain to select it 2 times when you do for semantic reference. I like that. And the table is a big one, right? So maybe, if I want to show a quick, maybe it might be better explained with easier shown with the demo here rather than explain the slide. If I go to, let's say, an assembly here that I'm going to open, let's see, yeah, right, real quick here. And again, I have my annotate, my combination states here. And if I go to my torque table, what I could do now is I could go table, and I can create a table. And before I create the table, as always, right, how do you want to go this way? How do you want to place it, right? And then, and once you place it, using your shift key, you're able to kind of drag it along specific directions. You're able to kind of also kind of proportionally scale it up or down. Maybe I also can use the mini toolbar right in here. Maybe I want to remove it from the state, and I probably have for my quick tables gallery, I have some tables that my admin has put together that I like to use, right? Your TBL file. Maybe I want to apply this torque table here, right? Real quick. And maybe we'll give it a little bit of, let's see, it's too small to see for me. So maybe I'll just keep it somewhere there, right? That's good, right? And what you can do here is you could also add semantic or links and semantic references in here. So for example, maybe I want to, I'll just, change this torque to 6.5, for example. And maybe I want to also do, let's see if I could go control select. And as I hold control and select a specific cell in that, it goes to a specific combination state, right? Or I can just go select multiple cells and also maybe have it copy the formatting from another cell, right? And if I want, I can go to another state here where I have a revision table, and maybe add, for example, insert another one below this. We'll just call it B, and I'll just call it, we'll just say ECN 1, 2, 3, and maybe we'll just put in, and we'll put in Tiago, and things like that. So yeah, it could be used even in parts, for example. So there's a lot of use cases for tables. Like maybe you want to have a table with your combination states where I have, if I look at and show the semantic query, I have my surface finish specification table here. So my point is, I know we're almost there on the Q&A time here, but just to kind of quickly run through these last few slides here. This enhancements in Creo 11 was focused on these areas. In Creo 10, the ability to relate a symbol or a surface finish to other annotations were introduced, right? And the ribbon UI customizations, like in the 2D drawing, many of you may have seen that. And the standards, right? They're conforming to the latest ASME and ISO standards. So, like restricted, reference management logic for a surface finish was introduced back in Creo 9. And just a quick snapshot of how the focus, right? Because the industry is adopting it, obviously. And so just to give you a quick snapshot of the enhancements that PTC has been doing in every release of Creo is a quick snapshot there. So with that, I'll just, maybe I'll see if, and Nick, if you have any questions, or maybe also I'll double check here before we got about 5 minutes roughly. So let's see if you have any questions here.
Yep, no questions so far.
Okay. I'll give them a few minutes. While we wait for any questions here, just a quick, I just wanted to point out that, our webinar recordings, for example, the last webinar from my colleague Sean Strickengauss is available for replay. It's both in our TriStar's website as well as in our YouTube channel, that you could see other, useful, informative webinars on Creo, Windchill, and the custom solutions we provide. And just more information. If you had any questions, feel free to reach out. But let's take a quick. I see a question that Gordon just asked here. Yeah, that's a good question, Gordon. How do you convince the team that MBD is much more than a 3D drawing? Yeah, so it's I guess it's maybe we got to have that discussion with the customer about that extended enterprise, where it's rather than just thinking of it as a 3D drawing, how it could be used by the other departments in your enterprise, and how instead of having this 2D drawing and the 3D model and some of the quality issues we talked about earlier, right? I know it's a journey. It's ingrained in us to continue using that 2D process. I had talked about that. What do we call the maturity levels, where moving from a drawing centric to a part centric, is to have a discussion and maybe start off with a pilot project and then kind of show the benefits, is what I would say. But very good question there. Any other questions?
Well, if there are no other questions, we can go ahead and wrap up a few minutes early, give people a few minutes of their time back.
All right.
Okay, great.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.